All right, Bob Flounders, Max Ralph here. Big day up at Penn State. We're at the Pagula Ice Arena. We just heard from Penn State's new defensive coordinator, Max. Jim Knowles talked with us for about a half an hour here on a Tuesday. I think we're still in early February. I'm getting a little lost at the time in the season, but I don't know about you, Max. First time meeting him. I thought it was a really nice give and take that we had with him.
Yeah.
The answers that he provided, the questions that were asked. I thought, well, just real quickly, some of the things he touched on. He was asked about kind of like how what goes into playing Ohio State defense, perspective wise, what it's like kind of being a Philly guy. He also talked about the culture that James Franklin has kind of established at Penn State, and it wasn't a surprising answer, but it was a really interesting answer that I definitely agree with. He talked about where he prefers to be on game day, whether it's on the box, in the coach press box, or on the field. And he also talked about at the very end kind of why he came to Penn State, just where he thinks Penn State fits in the 2025 picture.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bob. It was well, first of all, he, like us, doesn't know where the new press box is going to be, so that was an important part today. But no, I thought it was an interesting conversation with him. Very insightful and thoughtful too. Is the thing I wanted to say. It was a little bit different. Not that anything that Tom Allen or Manny Diaz did poorly when they were here, but they were a little bit more off the rip when you ask him a question. They get to it right away. Knowles really took his time today. He was very thoughtful about everything he said, tried to put it perfectly. And I know it's something you probably want to touch on a little bit more in detail, Bob, but the Philly ties and him continually talking about how he grew up to be a Penn State fan. Really interesting today. I thought all in all, it was really, really cool to see him here at Penn State for the first time.
Yeah, and it kind of, I think when you there's going to be some video of this, and Penn State's going to put some stuff out. I think it's going to resonate really with the Penn State fans, just because he's from Pennsylvania. He did talk about his Philly roots and kind of what it was like being able. He's not a young man. I can kind of understand that approach as well. But he talked about what it was like. Philadelphia is only a couple hours away from State College, but in his world when he was younger, it might as well have been across the country. It just wasn't that easy to get to Penn State. He always admired the program, but he was talking about his kind of basic style of defense, and he said a lot of things, but he said he believes in a defense that has answers. And I think that's a great way to put it, because you can get lost in the mumbo jumbo of all the calls and all the stuff you have to do. But really, that is what he believes his defense is about. And talked about Philadelphia. And I just wanted to ask you about when he talked about James Franklin and kind of coming here. One of the things that stood out to him was the culture that he's established here. And a lot of it has to do with just playing great defense. And he's right.
Yeah, no, a really important key, I think, actually kind of went away from James Franklin, and not only the culture he's built, but the staff that he's built and all of his assistant coaches. Jim Knowles said it, and it's absolutely right. You can't go through coordinator changes like Penn State has these past few years and still have successful defense without a great group of assistants there. Terry Smith, Anthony Poindexter, Deion Barnes, Dan Connor. They've all done a really good job of the defensive position groups. And the fact that James Franklin has brought those guys in, created a world in which guys don't have egos on the coaching staff. That was something Jim Knowles said. It's been really important to this success, and it was something that Knowles highlighted that's especially going to help a ton as he tries to carry over and implement his new defense.
Yeah, Max, that's something I think that is really fascinating. When you consider how long the Ohio State season was, and when you consider how long the Penn State season was, the offseason becomes shorter. And he was talking about it. James Franklin has always talked about, when he hires coordinators, what are the non-negotiables? So what are the things that the coordinator needs to have, but what are the things that James Franklin needs from the Penn State side, whether it's retaining assistants or whether it's their style of play or playing to their strengths? And I thought it was funny when Jim was talking about that. He said the process of kind of meshing like his stuff with the stuff that's already at Penn State, that's already proven. At one time, he caught me off guard. He used the word excruciating, because I do think this is going to take a little while. And I think that's one of the key storylines for this defense in the offseason, is how quickly he can get on the same page with what's already at Penn State.
Yeah. And I want to add to that. I thought that was a little bit different than what we've heard in the past, too, because you mentioned the non-negotiables, but it sounded like Knowles was pretty confident that he was going to have a lot of say in what happens here. I mean, I definitely think those non-negotiables still exist. Like James Franklin's not budging completely on that. But it really sounded like Knowles is kind of going to have the right of way to do a lot of what he wants here, which when you're willing to pay him that
I
much
was going to
money,
say
he should be.
I was going to say, and if he doesn't get what he wants exactly, he still can fall back on $3.1 million.
That's exactly
per
right.
year. But Max, like two things to wrap up with. It was at the very end, he was asked a question about why it was important to come to Penn State right now, and he almost blurted out the answer.
He did.
Before the question was asked, and I think it speaks to what he really believes about Penn State, and he just thinks they're so close, very, very close, and that was a genuine response. I think that's something Penn State fans are going to like, and also I just think that just moving forward, I think it's something that you're going to write about. He ideally would like to use hybrid defenders. So did Manny. So did Tom Allen. But he is specifically known for one kind of hybrid defender. It was one thing at Oklahoma State. He was used briefly at Ohio State. I think it's going to be neat watching him identify who are the body types, who are the players that might fit in this position that's hard to define, but he really just said it's a really good football player. You're just not sure what kind of shape and size it's going to be.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of names that could do that. Like you said, I want to dive into a little bit more, but right off the top of my head, Dejon Lane got a lot of run at safety this year as a true safety, but he's a big body who, if you put 20 pounds on him, he can play linebacker. He's going to be an interesting one. I think Takari Nelson, who made the switch from safety to linebacker this year, he's played really well on special teams. He's a guy that can maybe slot into a role that is a little bit less defined and look really good. Those are just two names that hopped off to me really quickly, but there are going to be others. And he also said maybe that doesn't work here because he didn't use it a whole lot at Ohio State. It just kind of depends on how this thing goes, which is going to take some time.
All right, so it was a pretty fascinating 30 minutes, I think, Jim Knowles. And he's just getting started. Like I said, I really think the fact that the offseason is a little bit shorter this year for both programs, it took him a little while to get here, and it took Penn State a little bit while to find him just because of the length of the season. It's a shorter offseason. I just think it's something to watch on the defensive side. There's no question, Max, they have the athletes. There's no question they have not only the DC, but also the assistants. But until all of that comes together, it might take a little while, and I think that is something to watch for as we get closer and closer to September.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in.
Good timing. 7